Hey, what's up students? It's Hannah and I'm so glad to see you guys here. So, fun fact about me, I played soccer in high school and I'm sure none of you are surprised because like how athletic my stature is, I get it. Of course, that meant the best part of sports, practice. I'm kidding, obviously. The absolute worst part of any sport ever is practice, especially conditioning week. For our team, we would have a 2-a-day for a week. In the morning, we would basically run, and then the night we would practice. The last day of each conditioning week, we would go to Sidcup Park in Maumee, and we'd run the steepest hill I have literally ever seen in my entire life. It took some serious leg strength to run this hill for even a few minutes, let alone hours. So we were running up this hill, up and down, and for some reason, on this day every year, everyone got like mad competitive. For some reason, no reason at all. So it soon became a competition of who could run the fastest and who had the absolute most power. Sad to say, I never had the most power. However, we are going to talk about a different type of power today. Power can look different for everyone. For you, power might look like the one who can captivate a group of people with a story and being the center of attention. Or it might be the power to influence what your friend group does the weekend, or even influence how you handle the drama that pops up in the friend group. Or power might even look like having a later curfew or finally getting your driver's license. Or maybe you have an idea of the kind of power you want, but you don't have it yet. Think about it for a second. Maybe you dreamt of being the captain of your sports team, or the first chair in your band. That I never was. Or you thought about running for president of student council. I did, and I lost. Maybe you are a freshman or a sophomore, imagining what kind of power comes with being an upperclassman. It's not much. Maybe you even took the risk and applied to be the manager of your shift at Chick-fil-A. The idea of being the place of power or authority, which just means someone who has more power than someone else, can be exciting. It can make us feel important, respected, or even a little bit kind of intimidating. Having power gives us a sense of what having a little bit of control is like. And let's be honest here, who doesn't want that? And since we're being honest with ourselves, we'd all like to feel a little powerful because it puts us in control above somebody else. But if you've ever been in a place of power, and I'm sure you know, it doesn't always go like how you imagine it would. Like even if you have it, there's always someone who has more. You aren't always sure what to do with it, and it isn't always as great as you think it's going to be. And that leaves us with some complicated feelings about power and the people who have it and those who don't. And why we want it and what to do with it when we have it. Maybe we feel like it never turns out quite the way we think that it should. In other words, competing for and then gaining power is complicated. So, what do we do about it? Power and authority have been around since the very beginning of time, and it wasn't designed to be as complicated as it feels sometimes. The opening book of the Bible, Genesis, or the Origin, this book of origins people believe was written by Moses, is all about the creation of things, including humankind. In it is written something so incredibly important when it comes to our idea of authority and power. Then God says, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and the livestock, and all of the wild animals, and over the creatures that move among the ground." That line, "so they may rule," was written about humans from the very beginning. According to the writer, humans were literally put on the planet and given power and authority over the rest of creation. So humans, you and me, were designed by God to have the traits of God. That's what it means to have God's image literally in us. And with God's image and likeness in us, that we are able to demonstrate and practice authority. Sounds great, right? Okay, now fast forward to today, and it's easy to see how humans have used that power and authority for good, but also we were able to see how humans have totally messed it up and used it for horrible, bad things. Power has been used to liberate or help, and oppress or harm entire groups of people. Power has been used to bring peace and start wars and wipe out millions of people. Power has been used to create resources that meet people's needs, and it has been used irresponsibly in lots of cases. So even though power was a great part of the deal of creation, humans haven't always dealt with that very well. But that wasn't always the case with Jesus. Jesus turned the idea of power upside down. Jesus flipped the idea of power upside down in a way that people never expected him to do it. He did things way differently than the religious leaders of his time were. Where other leaders fought to be seen as increasingly powerful by putting others down, Jesus chose to do the opposite. Not only that, he did something that none of them could have ever pulled off. He was killed by those leaders because they did not like the things that he did. But then, like the kind of biggest flex of all time, he came back to life. In fact, so that there were no questions. Jesus made it really clear what kind of power he had when he said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." I mean, there's really no question when it comes to Jesus' authority. He just was like, hey, just in case you're wondering, and after this whole coming back thing, I pulled it off. And now I'm having authority over everyone and everything ever. This is good news though, because it means that he's the perfect example of what being powerful looks like. Jesus could have used his power to put down or oppress people, but instead, he used it to do things that no one expected. He set out to create an upside-down kingdom where power was used in ways that God has always planned for it. In a culture that was used to things being a certain way, it was upside down that. He used his power to show that he honored and valued women, to prove that he wasn't okay with the corrupt and evil systems, to heal people who were sick, and to hang out with the outcasts of society, to forgive people who had wronged him, to include people who the most powerful people ignored. He never used his power to make others feel small, hurt, or oppressed. He's an example of power being used upside down. Not only that, but he is the perfect picture of how it was used. No matter what your experience has been with people in authority, or whether you haven't been handled power so well yourself, Jesus' example shows how power is supposed to be used and what it is supposed to look like. He has all authority, and he is the perfect example of authority we can follow and model when we are giving just a little bit of power ourselves. He shows us what power and authority in an upside-down kingdom can and should look like. Jesus turned the ideas of power upside down. So, what does that mean for you and me as we go through life trying to figure out power thing? Well, really the place we can start looking is choosing to rethink the way we think about power and authority. Why? Because whether we are people who push back against the authority in our lives, or people who are looking for opportunities to gain more power than we currently have, chances are we have seen or used power in a way that doesn't reflect the way God intended it to be used. So, by rethinking it, we can choose to look to Jesus' example of authority and the way God's always intended for power and authority to be used. If you're ready to take a new approach to the way you think about authority, here are a couple ways to start. Think about Jesus before going after power or going against the people who already have authority over us. We should think about the things we just talked about that Jesus said and did. We should ask ourselves, what made Jesus a good authority figure? And how did he use his power? Then we'll be better able to know what to do when we are giving power of any kind. We'll also know the kinds of authority figures worth following. Then once you thought about Jesus' example, you can rethink about the power you have. Chances are you have at least the power to influence. Think about the ways you can leverage your power for good. Maybe you can be the one to invite a new kid at school into a conversation. Maybe you can use your influence to stop a joke when someone else is hurt by it. Or maybe you can be the person who puts an end to gossip and shuts down rumors. Don't just talk about it in your small group, be about it in your life. Rethink the authority figures you have in your life. Take some time to think about the coaches, teachers, parents, small group leaders, your bosses, and whoever else seems like they have some sort of power in your life. Maybe you love the way you see their power, or maybe you don't. Either way, learn to look for the good. Look for the positive things in the way that they are when they use their authority that they have. Maybe they believe deeply in your potential. Maybe they defend you when you need it the most. Maybe they've taught you valuable life lessons. The truth is that authority can be annoying, truthfully, but when you think about the example that Jesus gave us, and then you line it up with people around you and how they use their power, are there things that match up? By rethinking the authority in your life, you can change the way you see them, or even change the way how you treat those with power moving forward. And just to be clear, this does not mean that you should ignore the reality of harmful authority or the harmful ways people use their power. This is a difference between authority that's annoying and authority that's extremely harmful. You might be annoyed that your mom's asking you to take out the trash, but it does not mean that she's bad for doing this. In fact, she's using her power to teach you responsibility. As lame as it might feel, But anyone who uses their power in ways that are harmful to you, someone else, or even themselves is not using it in a way that aligns with Jesus' examples. Let me say this again. Anyone who uses their power in ways that are harmful to you, someone else, or themselves is not the authority that aligns with Jesus' examples. In fact, Jesus spoke out against this kind of authority time and time again. Remember, Jesus turned the idea of power upside down and used his authority and his power for the good of the people, to help free the oppressed and to benefit those he had power over. So if you're experiencing the use of power in harmful ways, the best thing for you to do is speak up. In fact, my hope is that this group of people is the safest place in the world for you to talk about literally anything. So say something if you are in a position where authority is being used in harmful ways. So yes, we might get annoyed over authority and even find ourselves wanting power in ways that might not be beneficial. But we can be confident that in Jesus we have a perfect example of the way power and authority are intended to be used. He uses power in an upside down way. As we go about our day-to-day lives and as we get older and find ourselves in positions of authority more often, we can choose to rethink the way we think about authority and power. And when we do this, we may see our perspectives on people like our parents, guardians, bosses, teachers, and coaches begin to change. When we look at the good in our teachers, we might even see that our classes get better. When we choose to see our coaches in a positive light, we might find ourselves running a little hard and a little less tempered. Not me. When we see the way our parents sacrifice for us, taking out the trash won't feel so annoying. The way we think about authority can actually change how we experience authority and how people in authority interact with us. Plus, we'll have a better picture of what good authority is supposed to look like when we're in positions of authority and power someday. Why not start to rethink the way you think about power and authority today? As we head to small group today, think about your answer to this question. When you think about power, what is the first thing that comes to mind?